Hi there. Welcome to Bourbon Turntable. We are the show that blends the love of music with the love of whiskey. Welcome also to Bushwood. I'm on my patio. Got a little fire going back here behind me. Probably can't see it, but it's nice. Got a little fire pit going, so it's cool. Beautiful early November evening, and I'm here to welcome you to part 2 of our show with Lenny Eckstein from Deerhammer Distilling. This week, we're going to be talking with Lenny about a couple of his whiskeys and talk with him about the best bands from the state of Colorado. Now, you may have some that you love. If you do, be sure to chime in the comments section when we post the show. Always love to hear from you guys. We want to also tell you about the Bar Cart Co-op. Bar Cart Co-op is a collection of friends who produce content for the whiskey enthusiast. In other words, we produce content for you. Distillers Talk with Alan Bishop and Christy Atkinson. Distillers Talk, they talk with distillers from across the nation, around the world. They talk about virtually anything and everything when it comes to distillation, grains, cooperage, fermentation, you name it, they cover it. It's very, very interesting. Very, very interesting show. Alan also has a show called One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute. If you're a distiller, whether legal or illicit, you can send in questions to Alan about anything and everything as it relates to distillation, and he will post YouTube responses to those questions. Really geeking out on the subject of distillation. Speaking of geeking out, our friends Pat, Mike, and Mitch over at My Whiskey Den. My Whiskey Den, where craft whiskey is king, every Monday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. Tune in live. They have wonderful guests, great tastings, and a lot of cool people that are just hanging out in the chat, having a good time on a Monday night. It's a great way to start your week. And then, of course, there's our show, and we want to make sure that you know all about
All right,
that.
don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification to find out when new episodes come out, which is every Wednesdays on all of your streaming services everywhere, Apple, Spotify, whatever other ones there are, and the YouTube where you can watch the live recording itself.
Thanks a lot, Mike. We always appreciate your contribution to the show, as annoying as this may be to you. All right, so a couple of music things before we start into part 2 of our show with Lenny. First of all, the Who album Quadrophenia turned 50 in the last couple of weeks. Probably my favorite album of all time. It just speaks to me. It is creative. It rocks hard. It mellows out. It hits all the feels, as the kids say. I don't know if the kids really say that anymore or not, but it does take you on a wide range of emotions. Got a chance to see the Who, or what remains of the Who, in Las Vegas a few years ago, and they did, I don't know, probably at least a third of the songs off Quadrophenia, and being a double album, that was a pretty good chunk of it, and a pretty good chunk of the show. So if you don't know the Who's Quadrophenia, I encourage you to check it out. Just get in a place where you can put the distractions of the world out. The fall is a great time to listen to this album. It's an album that every fall I at least go through a couple of times, and just sit down, have a pour of something. Right now, I'm still working on this Deerhammer hickory smoked corn whiskey. Fantastic. So just find a place where you can sit down, drink a little something good, and enjoy that album. It holds up incredibly well, and so again, probably my favorite album of all time. And I know that Andy Kasperzak and I had a moment where we really bonded over our love for this album one time. So Andy, I dedicate the intro of this show to you, my friend. All right, so enough of my yakking. Let's boogie on down to part 2 of our show with Lenny Eckstein of Deerhammer Distilling. So we're going to get into some more whiskey and talk some about Colorado bands in just a little bit. But before we do that, Lenny, one of the great things about Deerhammer is we can order from you, and you will ship to us, right? You can get whiskey, not whiskey, and merch, which I think are the descriptors that are used on the website. So tell people a little bit about how they can order from you.
Yeah. Well, just to get to the point of it, you can visit deerhammer.com and you could do all the things that Kevin just spoke to. It definitely gets more confusing than that, unfortunately. And I'll say again, I will nix the boring things about distilleries for this podcast, save for another. But the short form is we can ship and sell merch, but we cannot ship and sell whiskey to you. Thank you, government. But there is a way that we can make it happen. And I'll save you the details, but you can order from our website and a really awesome company will ship you our whiskey. Someday, maybe we'll be able to ship it to you directly and you'll see my fingerprints on the bottles, but probably see them anyway. So yeah, that's one place that you can get our standard offerings. Another one, I suppose, worth mentioning. I think a lot of listeners are familiar with sealbox.com, but they're currently, they have in stock. As far as I know, they're still in stock. We've got a really nice single barrel of our hickory smoked corn whiskey. Kevin, you had a bottle of that, I believe.
Oh man, it's so good.
Yeah, that's a nice one. This bourbon we're drinking, actually, they have that one. And I believe our standard American Single Malt expression. So sealbox.com, good spot to get some unique Deerhammer as well. And while it's not an online option, I'm hitting the road tomorrow, which might not be tomorrow for those listening, but I'm heading to Missouri. We're actually Deerhammers, we're finally starting to distribute out of Colorado in a more meaningful way.
Fantastic.
So Missouri's first up, and any other, if there's any distributors listening to the show, holler. I'd love to whiskey distributed in other states. But deerhammer.com, great place to start.
Yeah. And you mentioned the hickory smoked corn whiskey. That is just delicious. Again, it's one of those things, start down that path. It requires some discipline to stop.
Yeah, that's a fun one. It's a sleeper because, very quietly, corn whiskey is starting to gain some traction, maybe in bars and, just in general. It doesn't say bourbon, so it doesn't sell as much. But if it was in a new barrel, it'd be bourbon. So it's like the fact that it goes into a used barrel makes it corn whiskey. And I like it. It's a fun one.
Yeah. So we're not drinking corn whiskey tonight. No. But let's talk a little bit about that since we brought it up. Where do you see that going? I think there's some things that play out in the whiskey industry that are going to start pulling more and more product for corn whiskey. What do you think about what's going on there?
Well, I think a few things. I mean, truth be told, this product that we make, this hickory smoked corn whiskey, was designed to be a fairly quick to bottle product, unlike everything else that we were deciding we wanted a minimum 4-year maturation on. And I'll tell you, like that, it's comprised of 100% corn. And we cold smoke 10% of the grain bill with hickory for 6 to 8 hours, then mash and go through the whole process, and it goes into used barrels. But it tastes awesome at 9 months. It just tastes awesome at 2 to 4 years.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a roundabout way of saying, I am seeing more intrigue and interest in it. It's a little bit of a harder sell again because it doesn't say bourbon to the average person out there who might not be game for saying, hey, I want it all. If it's flavor, I want to try it.
Right.
But bartenders are super game for it. And whether it's for cocktails or just in the same manner that I like to surprise people with, what we make at Deerhammer, I think bartenders like to surprise people with what they're pouring in their glass and sliding across the bar.
Yeah.
So it's done really well for us there. And we've had to be very deliberate about not talking about it too much because we don't make that much. I mean, we only make like 10 to 20 barrels a year. So, we have to be careful with our stores, and, we can only make so much of any product throughout the year. We just had kind of divvied up, and primarily single malt and bourbon are our main production batches.
Yep. You had mentioned that you're doing that cold smoked process and things like that, and have some 2 to 4 year stocks. Are there any ideas that you could speak to, maybe future forecasting about using that as a seasoning component in some other products?
Do you mean like the barrels that after the whiskey comes out of to be a seasoning part?
Potentially, or just using that corn whiskey and like an American whiskey blend on down the road with some of your rye and your American single malt, things like that.
Yeah, I've been dragging my feet for a solid 8 years on a project that would be I know it's so long. Distilling does weird things to time, but
I understand.
Yeah, I've had ambitions. I have everything lined up. I have the name. I have this idea of a blend, which would be an American whiskey, and it would certainly have a part in it, and it would all like kind of be married together and matured in whether it be like a foeder or a hogshead, just something that can really let it sit for a while. I would love to do that. We've messed around with it a little bit, but we've never brought it to market. So yeah, I think it's a really neat component. And then on the flip side, back to what I was saying earlier, I do really enjoy pulling the hickory smoked corn whiskey out of the barrels and dropping other things into the barrels. And I just, I'd say unearthed, but like, like our barrels are all stored on like saddle racks and they're not that hard to get to. It's just a day of or a few hours of forklifting. But I found a bunch of single malt barrels that are like not that old, like maybe 2.5 years old, but they were matured in used oak, and 2 of them were matured in third fill barrels, and the last one was hickory smoked corn whiskey before the single malt went in. And they've got a really nice profile. So we'll see where those go in a few more years, but I like that flavoring component as well.
Okay. Wow.
That makes the hair stand up on my arms.
I'm gonna have to come hang out with you and bring a drill and a couple of flasks one of these days.
I mean, that's one of the best things about being only like relatively well organized and not exceptionally well organized. You do forget about we don't really we know what barrels we have here, and it's part of government reporting. But sometimes I forget what we do. So then I'll pull out a row like, holy crap, that's awesome, because we always have little handwritten notes on those different ones. Yeah, it's fun.
Well,
very cool.
You what you're doing with the corn whiskey though is exceptional, and I hope you have the time to do more with it.
It's it's a fun one. I gotta say, it's like a lot of distillers talk about how difficult rye is to make. I dispute that in the sense that I would say rye is messy to make sometimes. But for my system, our corn whiskey is the hardest thing we make. And it's not just because of the grain. It's because the smoking process, doesn't really soak up smoke very well. So, 6 to 8 hours of continuously refilling our chamber that holds the wood chips, that's a pain. And filling these, we're again, it's maybe 12 to 1300 pounds of grain. So a few hundred pounds of corn that have to be poured over onto perforated sheet pan racks. And we actually have this weird technique where we alternate where we kind of scrape some to the side so the smoke can make its way through and, kind of go back and forth throughout the chamber. It's the hardest product that we make. Gin's pretty hard too, actually, but I love it. So that's part of it, is enjoying the process or being proud and having pride in the process.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yes. Fantastic. Well, one of the things that you sent us is, I don't know if you can see this or not, but if I can figure out how this all works. I've only been doing this for 2.5 years. This when you get a little sample bottle from somebody like Lenny and it's got handwritten stuff on it, it's pretty exciting. But this is American Single Malt, 120 proof, 4-year-old. And not just sour mash, but super sour mash. So what exactly is super sour mash? Is it sour mash that can leap tall buildings in a single bound?
Yeah. There's no such thing. We kind of made it up. But, but what the process is, I think it's easier to reference brewing processes. So anyone listening and you guys, I'm sure you've had sour beers. And breweries that don't want to bring on a certain component of a souring program where they might be introducing, whether it's lactobacillus or Brettanomyces, things that are very easily transmitted into beers that shouldn't have it, they'll they'll impart a process referred to as, it's called kettle souring, and it lets them more so isolate or not propagate too much of the lacto in their process. And in short, what we borrowed from that was when we mash, we didn't just mash, bring up the temp, and chill and pump into the fermenter. We mashed and let it sit for 48 hours. And in that time, it cools down and the bacteria can take hold. And then we brought it back up to temp and got it stirred up again. And in this case, it was American single malt, so it wasn't a grain in. So we louder. So we separate that liquid. And then we put it in the fermenter. And then we let it sit in the fermenter for a full week as opposed to 4 days. So just giving it a lot of time. Now, I think you guys know, and listeners probably know, the quick and easy way to explain what a sour mash is simply to say you take some of the liquid that is left over from the initial distillation that is rather acidic, and you add it to your next mash. And it's a tool to bring your pH down to an ideal level if needed, which in our case, we need about 3 to 5% of that backset to get it to the acidification we need. So that's a pretty simple process, and it does lend a little bit of a flavor, and it brings some, food for the new yeast to eat in terms of the dead yeast cells. All boring stuff, probably. But the super sour mash that we talk about is also a component of acidifying and imparting those organic acids that acidify, and over time in the barrel with oxidation will develop into really interesting flavors. And I'm curious to see what you guys think, but I see some parallels to some rum processes that also do some similar things. Yeah. So yeah, this one's unique. It's
if I didn't know what this was, I would have pegged it as a brandy.
Yeah, definitely some different fruit notes going on.
Yeah.
I could totally see that.
I get some of that darker stone fruit, like almost a plum thing on the palate. The nose has that really bright, like floral honeysuckle thing. I get, the gas station peach rings. Something I use that note all the time, but there's something in American single malts in particular that really brings out for me. And like you said just a second ago, just that brandy. And I don't know if it's as much in the palate for me as it is the viscosity and the mouthfeel really recalls that for me. There's some flavors for sure, but just the viscosity of it reminds me of an Armagnac or a brandy.
Yeah. What kind of barrel was this in, Lenny?
Same standard profile, so heavy toast number 2 char.
Okay.
And
so new barrel.
New barrel. Okay. And I didn't a lot of the times. So like this is the benefit to me of being a small distillery, making one barrel at a time, is every barrel is like that batch, and we have right next to it on the barrel rack the barrel that was made the next day, and they're so different. So I should have sent you both just for comparison. But yeah, that super sour mash process, as we've been calling it, is definitely it definitely changes the flavor profile. And I've brought it up to other distillers and let them try it, and they're like, what did your steam go down? And I was like, it sure did. That's exactly. But once it happened, we were like, you know what? Let's try this again. So we've done it in other batches as well. Yeah. Other single malt batches. We did in a rye batch. It's coming along really interestingly. So it's a fun process. I'm going to try to do more of it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
One thing that I noticed about it is how oily it is.
Yes.
What in your process creates that oiliness?
Well, I mean, on one hand, it's the pot still distillation. I mean, in terms of our single malt, it's just malted barley. So it's those components. I don't know that, the esterification that's happening in the barrel, the long ferment, I haven't run this through a lab and gotten results. I'm actually curious to. I'd like to do a side by side, as I said, of those two barrels.
I mentioned that because it looks oilier in the glass. It feels oilier on, or more oily. What's the proper term? Oilier or
I
more
like how you're
oily?
saying oilier.
Yeah,
More
it's,
oily.
it's not necessarily easy to say, but it feels more oily in my mouth, and it's just different. To me, it's different than what I get from your other single malts, and I don't know if it is that super sour mash process or if it's just me imagining something. But whatever the case, this is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. This is an interesting one. I've been kind of, you know, I have a stack, well, 2 stacks of what I refer to as like single barrel candidates. So anytime an account might want to stop by and pick a single barrel, I don't have to root through everything. I just know what I think are some of my favorites. And they
Right.
truly are what I believe to be the best we've ever made, because that's what I want out there for a single barrel. I don't want any duds. And in a sense, that might kind of hurt our final blend a little bit in a way, because we don't get to add this. But this barrel is in that stack, and we just did a single barrel pick with a liquor store the other day, and I had to say to them, like, I'm not ready to let this one go yet. But that was 2 weeks ago, and I'm starting to warm up to letting it go. So I did just send out a sample of it to a pretty cool bottle shop, and we'll see.
Well, when you do let it go, let me know how I can get in touch with the people at the wherever gets it.
Yeah,
because
throw that in the group chat, please.
this is so darn good. And to me, it's a little. We talked earlier about your bourbon now with some intentional flavor drift. To me, this is a little different than the other single malt single barrels that I've had of yours, and I don't get as much chocolate on this as I do some of the others.
No,
Is
I
that
think
fair?
definitely the fruit notes are so punched up, and
Yeah.
like, I think you guys nailed it. I also, maybe it's because I had this food recently. I don't know if it's actually food, but there's like diced up sweet papaya cubes that you can buy in like a weird bag, and
Yeah.
some of that note. I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's so different than our standard profile single malt, and I don't know. I love this batch.
Yeah, it is really, really good. And, there are a lot of things that I've had from you that I just kind of blown my mind. We're getting ready to taste one of them. But this, in terms of a single malt, it's up there with any that I've had. And I've tried to sample as many single malts as I could in the last year or two. But this stands up with anything, and is your competition is you.
Yes.
Really. I mean, because if I had a bottle of this beside a bottle, I've got, like I said, a few different bottles of your single malt, it would be difficult to choose between them, because I really get something different out of this than I do the others. So, man, just so cool.
It's so different than some of the Kentucky American single malts that I've had. And I don't know if that's yeast strain or anything like that, but Limestone Branch has a line of American single malts, and our mutual friend Alan Bishop has let us sample some of his single malt products and things like that. This is a whole other lane on the same highway. And I don't know if that's geography or whatever the mitigating factor may be, but it's really cool and really, really unique.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's there's intent, and then there's like the process that I imparted on this one was, it was definitely a let's see what happens. But again, like I'm a fan of this process, and it's not something we can do for every batch, but it is something that we're going to start to bring into at least like annually. So it's a fun one. And then again, like to your kind of statements of like what could be done. And this is how like I think a lot of distillers approach things, but it comes down to like, well, what are the choices? We start with our grain and the percentages of grain that are in single malt's case, the percentages of specialty malt. And then do we choose to louder, or do we choose to do a grain in batch, which if a distillery is set up to make bourbon, they might not have the capabilities of separating off that liquid. And when you leave the grain in, the flavor profile is definitely going to be different. And it's not a better worse. It's just different. And I've really enjoyed some of the grain in products as they're, be it the offering from Yellowstone or the Claremont Steep.
Yep.
And I haven't tried the Spirits French Lick offering yet. I'd love to. It's so rewarding to see. I wanted to do single malt from day one because I was comfortable with malted barley from beer production. It just was a thing. Like I was, like really hoping that people would care someday. And I love that they do now. And I love that so many entrants to the field have done such awesome things. And we're just trying to do our damn thing. And I do love this barrel. I'll let you guys know who gets it. If you know anyone in Kentucky who wants it, who can figure out how to bring it in via a distributor, I would love to. I want to distribute in Kentucky so bad.
We agree.
Yeah.
I think we might have a mutual friend that could help.
All right,
we'll have to see.
Yeah. But before we get into the last whiskey that we have to sample with you, let's talk a little bit about Colorado musicians and bands. And I don't know that you can talk Colorado without John Denver.
Yeah.
Even though John Denver wasn't born in Colorado, he was he came from a military family and moved around quite a bit. But Colorado became home for him, I think, like late teens or something like that. And his name wasn't just coincidentally John Denver. It was Henry John Duschendorf. So I would call myself John Denver too.
I'll move on his part.
Yeah. So any thoughts on John Denver?
Yeah. So not unlike my younger years when I just didn't really think much of, whiskey in general. And I just did shots if they were in front of me. I never thought much of John Denver. In fact, I maybe thought little of him because I was like, whatever, like hokey. And then I felt like I was missing something. I certainly could have just looked him up on Spotify because this was like recently that I came to give him a second or a fair shake. But I was riding my motorcycle by not too far away, actually in the direction of where I believe he lived. I was riding towards Aspen. I stopped at Twin Lakes General Store gas station, and they actually sell Deerhammer there. So I popped in, said hello, and I noticed they also sell vinyl there. So I started flipping through their vinyl.
Wow.
And I found
you have a gas station that sells whiskey and vinyl?
What is going on?
Gas station on planet Earth.
And it's right across the street from like this absolutely stunning lake that's like gorgeous. And
sorry to interrupt your story.
It is a really cool spot. And anybody who's out visiting Colorado, checking out distilleries, maybe come by Deerhammer, I would go towards Twin Lakes and check out this same gas station convenience store. But I picked up a John Denver album. I don't know, some random like greatest hits or something. And I was like, I have to give this a fair shake. And the first song I was like, ooh, like just as hokey as I thought. But I gave it a few listens and I actually came around. And I actually have since then put a number of John Denver songs in a few playlists that I listen to often.
Yeah.
So I've come around to appreciate the guy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Drew, I know you have some John Denver in your set list from time to time.
I do every now and again. So yeah, much like Lenny, everybody knows Country Roads. Everybody knows, Leaving on a Jet Plane and Annie's Song, just kind of the three that probably your dad or your granddad listened to or was on the radio. But the guy can really write. So, I was turned on to this kind of tree, sort of like a family tree, but it was artists from the home of the great John Prine. Mm-hmm. And so it's just people that are in his family lineage as far as songwriters go. And John Denver came up. Yeah. And the one that was referenced in the article was a song called Prisoners.
I love that song.
So, man, if you haven't heard Prisoners, go listen to that song. It's beautifully written, beautifully done. It's not necessarily John Denver's not necessarily somebody I'll reach for often in terms of somebody I
Right.
care to listen to. Sort of like Bob Dylan, don't love the voice,
Mhm.
but just mad respect for the writing, and it's just beautifully done.
Yeah.
Kind of, the Neil Young and Bob Dylan and John Denvers of the world, they just need some more respect as far as writers. So,
Yeah.
mad respect.
Yeah. Of course, Rocky Mountain High was probably his biggest hit.
That's a great album.
Yeah. Yeah.
The whole all of the season suite tracks.
Mhm.
That one, I mean, it's cool. It's fun stuff.
Yeah.
Paradise.
He has 33 albums or singles that were either gold or platinum. I mean,
Wow.
Yeah.
how do you do that? I mean, that's just incredible. And then, we talked about Joan Jett being in a movie. John Denver was in the movie Oh God, where George Burns played God. So if you haven't seen that, it's worth checking out. It's, a little bit of, feel good hokiness, but
Came
it's
out maybe in like 82, 84?
sometime in the 80s. Yeah. Early 80s. But yeah, John Denver was good in it. And, he, again, not somebody that I'm going to, necessarily listen to frequently, but you can't argue with the fact of his that he was a very prolific songwriter and artist who passed away in a plane crash. So, but and he has 2 states have his songs as state songs: West Virginia and Colorado. So I don't know that anybody else can claim that. So that's pretty cool.
That's neat.
The Lumineers are also a Colorado band, kind of an alt folk band that I call the Beardless Mumfords.
Yes.
They're kind of in that same genre, just without the facial hair.
Stomp and holler crowd.
Yes. Any thoughts on the Lumineers?
I mean, it's interesting to go through this list and like think about, acts or musicians that are from the state, and if they get, I'd say the approval, but like, I feel like the Lumineers are one that Colorado does kind of hold in high regard, and they kind of have their backs. Like, yes, you're one of our bands.
Yep.
Even though it can be a little like, I don't know, I hate to say this because like I think they have some great songs, but it's a little snoozy. Like it's not something I'm gonna put on too often.
No,
but they put out some nice songs.
Yeah, I could, go through 2, 3, 4 songs, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for something else.
Yeah.
But I get it. I get their popularity, especially with a certain crowd.
What I will say on them, so I have seen them once on purpose and about 4 times on accident.
They're on again.
They're everywhere. I mean, whether it was a festival gig or they're opening for somebody else I was going to go see, their live show is incredible. If you ever get a chance to check them out live, it's incredibly high energy compared to the records. But one of the things that I love is they're all multi-instrumentalists. And so multiple times throughout the set, they'll just shift down an instrument, and the lead singer ends up playing drums, and the bassist ends up playing piano, and the piano player ends up singing. And it's just bonkers, the level of musicianship and creativity that goes on in that band. So I get what you guys are saying, but their creativity and their musicianship live is unreal.
That's good to know.
Very interesting. Well, I'll have to check that out then. I don't question the talent. The musical ability. It's just, where does it fit in your wheelhouse? Right. Now, one that is also exceptional live that, man, I love is Nathaniel Rateliff. Again, not born in Colorado, born in St. Louis, but moved to Colorado in his teenage years. Love Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats.
Yep.
Lenny, any thoughts on this guy?
Yeah. Yeah, so they're another one that like I was a little older, but in a sense I got to watch them come up
Yeah.
and just phenomenal energy. The whole band, just awesome talent. But little like whiskey Deerhammer relevant story to Nathaniel Rateliff and Light Sweats. They played a show that was loosely tied to a whiskey festival in Denver.
Mhm.
And like this is kind of a long story, but I'll summarize it shortly. The one really cool, I mean, the distilling community, whether it's the country, the world, but Colorado in particular, the camaraderie and willingness to help out other distilleries here
Mhm.
has always been very impressive to me. And it's something that as Deerhammer was helped, I've always tried to kind of pay that forward.
Right.
Where I'm going with this, one of the owners of Peach Street Distillery, it's Colorado's first bourbon, was kind of one of the guys who orchestrated that show happening.
Mhm.
It was the Bluebird Theater. And he came up to me and said, "Hey, give me a bottle of your single malt." And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Giving it to the band so they can hold it up on stage." I was like, "Why mine?" He was like, "You got to hold up somebody's." Like let's. He's like, "You guys need some shine." And I was like, "That's fucking awesome." So yeah,
Yeah.
at
That's
the
cool.
end, like towards the end of the show, he was like, "Cheers to Deerhammer and cheers to Distill," and like I was like, "What the fuck is going on here? This is amazing." Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
That is very cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That is very cool. But this band is thick and rich in their musicianship. And the album that they came out last year, The Future, I think was one of my finalists for album of the year. Just great, and I still go back to it quite frequently. Drew, I know you're a fan. You've seen them before, right?
Yep, seen him a couple times. When we're not recording, I'll tell you about the night I got drunk with the night sweats in a hot tub in East Nashville. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. Needless to say, no, they're so gifted, and I love having kind of your classic rock band and then having a 3-piece horn section. That's just cool, and
Yeah.
not to speak ill of Chicago, but they do it better than Chicago. It's just a hardcore. Like it's a rock band with a horn section, man. It's cool.
Yeah.
So no, super gifted. And then if you have not seen their cover of Souvenirs that they did at the Ryman last year for the You've Got Gold tribute, it's pretty incredible. So one of my favorite songs, and he just does it such justice.
Yeah. So great band. If you've not heard them, what are you doing? Another band from Colorado is The Fray. They were kind of popped up on a number of lists of the top bands from Colorado. Any thoughts on The Fray?
Yeah, they're another one that I feel like they were of my almost 25 years in Colorado. I left for about 2 years, year and a half, 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when I had first moved back, that's when they were starting to really start blowing up. And they definitely were getting a lot of support from folks in Colorado. It was like, I think I worked with a girl who went to school with a couple of those guys or something. So there's always like those ties.
Right.
They're another one where like definitely respect for the quality of their music. Not something I can get probably more to your point, like about 3 songs in, I'm like, all right, good.
Yep. Yeah. Good
stuff.
Yeah, I may need to revisit these guys, but I kind of lump them in with bands like Lifehouse, where I'm like, this is the Grey's Anatomy end of the show soundtrack, right? This is that band.
Yes, that's exactly right.
That's the Fray for me. Maybe I'm missing something. I may need to go revisit, but I don't know much about the Fray.
Yeah, they started out in before even they had a record deal. They started out more in a Christian genre, and they didn't want to be kind of pigeonholed in that way. But a lot of the music does deal with struggle and faith and that kind of stuff. But a lot of angst-filled songs and trying to sound like John Mayer on the vocals. But again, couple songs in, and then okay, I'm good. Good So, and another, the next one on the list is One Republic. And these are like white dudes with tats and perfectly coiffed hair. And
Mm-hmm.
if they had a flat brimmed hat on and were hanging out at the distillery, they would be Bourbon Bros.
Mm.
So this is a band that I really struggle with. But what do you guys think?
I mean, well, they might be the only band on here that, like, if I look them up on Spotify and play their first song that has the most amount of listens, I didn't recognize it. And I will go further and say, astounded by how many listens it has.
Yes.
Like, was it in the billions? I don't know. It was something like an astronomical number.
Yeah, they've got a lot of lessons. Drew, what are your thoughts on?
Yeah, I think they did like I don't think it was like a halftime show, but maybe it was like a Dick Clark's New Year's Eve, like, or something like that I heard them, because they have that one song with Timbaland, Apologize. It's too late to apologize. That one.
Yeah.
It was like big in 2007, 2008, something like that. That's all I know about them. That's literally all I know about them. But I remember.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I remember sitting with friends at some point in middle school and high school and seeing them do that song with Timbaland on TV, and that's the only touch point I have with them.
Their song "Counting Stars" has 2.1 billion listens.
It's astounding.
Yeah. Now their lead singer Ryan Tedder also has a pretty strong career as a producer and a writer, working with Taylor Swift and Adele and other folks. But it's just, boy,
it's the Swifties, man. That's why they have 2 billion streams. They're everywhere.
This is one that I'm, one maybe 1.5 songs in, and I'm like, okay, we need to find something else here. But I've got one more that I had on my list. But Lenny, what about anything else that you have that are Colorado bands that we need to know about?
So I've got one that's kind of newer in a way. Eddie Roberts and the Lucky Strokes. And you might know Eddie Roberts. He's from the New Master Sound. And I would encourage you guys and anyone listening to definitely look up this new release from Eddie Roberts and the Lucky Strokes. But they've got one song in particular, Whiskey Makes Me Stronger. Great song.
Yeah.
But also the lyrics are super on point. So yeah.
Very cool.
And then there's like a lot, I'm probably missing a bunch, but Colorado definitely has a lot of bands that came fall into the jam band scene.
Yep.
Like String Cheese Incident, Leftover Salmon. There's a whole bunch of that, of varying, sizes of success. Probably a few others I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
But Colorado's always had kind of a nice music scene, and
String Cheese Incident was the one that I thought about putting in the list, but I didn't.
They're a little obscure for some folks, but
on the field, definitely a jam band feel to it. But the last one that I had on the list was Big Head Todd and the Monsters. Is that a band that you're familiar with, Lenny?
I mean, I know who they are, and I mean, no disrespect to that, but I've always kind of scratched my head a little bit and been like, I don't get it. I feel like their popularity outpaces their, I won't say their quality, but like their, I don't know. They've never been my thing. And then when I went back and listened to anything that I had not heard on the radio, which was really only one song, I started to realize like they kind of fall into that, like, and they were at the same time as, it's like a Dave Matthews without the energy, Dave Matthews Band, or I don't know, like it was like at that same time as like when everybody was on the Hootie and the Blowfish kind of, bandwagon. I don't know. I think like when that was happening, I was at that time. I was looking for other things, maybe more obscure things, but there was a time when like the internet wasn't the conduit for new music at the time.
Right.
Radio was pushing certain things, so it became like, how do I find these other, like, what, I'm sick of this. I hear it like 3 times a day on my
Right.
drive. What else can I hear? And I
Yeah.
felt like Big Head Todd kind of fell into that for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the thing that is their claim to fame is just longevity. I mean, they've started in '86 out of Boulder, and they've just been making albums and touring pretty much nonstop since then. I kind of like them. I think they've got a kind of an Americana blues rock kind of feel to it, and so I enjoy their music. Honestly, I'd not listened to it in several years since until this popped up. This show topic popped up in the last week or so, but just going back and listening to some of their stuff, yeah, I like it. I can listen to that for a while.
You know, and I might also be taking like original hipster approach to this, where, you know, when I first got to Colorado after a few years, you heard about them so much, I was like, whatever, enough. You know, like,
yeah.
So maybe that's where my slant's coming from.
No, I think they're kind of a cult following in Colorado, and they're just kind of a fringe following elsewhere. But I mean, they tour nationally, and so yeah. Now, Drew, is this? I think this. You said pre-show. This is one that you weren't really familiar with.
That had never crossed my radar. So you had made some recommendations about some records to check out. So I will look into them on some drive time, hopefully later this week, and I will get back to you the next time we have Lenny on to drink his delicious whiskey.
We have more of this American single malt. But what we do have right now is this Deerhammer Progeny Series number 4. And man, you knocked this out of the park. So I know this is finished in several different barrels. So kind of talk us through how all of this came together and your blending process with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess so. The Progeny Series is always a collaboration with another Colorado maker.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it was a collaboration with Carboy Winery. Now, the trick with these is that they usually don't happen quick. I mean, it could have in a sense, because we could have taken a fully matured product and did a 3-month finish, but we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
We did a multi-year finish in 3 different barrels from Carboy Winery. One was ex Albarino. So, you know, actually, when I got that barrel, I was looking for, I hit them up, and actually, I got to rewind a little bit. The first one I filled was ex cider. They have a few locations where they produce that. One of the other locations, they have a line of cider. It's made over in Breckenridge, Colorado, about hour and a half from here.
Mm-hmm.
And their producer at the time hit me up and said, "Do you have any ex bourbon barrels I can put our cider in?" And I said, "Sure do, but can I have them back when you're done?" So that started the project, and I put American Single Malt into these cider barrels. And it developed after like a year or so, such a like crazy spiced cider note that it was too much on its own. So it was a component that I knew was needed to be like accentuate something else. And I thought, I tried a few things. And I tried like a kind of a poor man's or a ghetto blend where I would try different wines and mix the whiskey with it. And I came to realize that a Sauvignon Blanc was a really nice wine component. So I hit up Carboy and said, "Do you guys have anything like Sauvignon Blanc?" And like, "We have Albarino, and that's the closest thing we have, and I think that would work out well." So then from there, I moved Single Malt into ex Albarino barrels, and I started to work on that as a like, you know, like I'm okay with going. I've always, even in brewing, I would, if I brewed a batch of beer and it was, you know, too dry or too hoppy, rather than getting rid of it, I would brew its counterpart to intermingle with it to try to hit the sweet spot. So that's what I was doing initially. And then from there, we had one other project that we were working with them on where they gave us a lot of Gewürztraminer, another wine, and we distilled it into brandy. And that brandy had aged in barrels for 3 years. And I pulled the brandy out of those barrels, put them into different barrels, but I did that so I could free up the brandy barrels for more. Because again, like I'm just looking for all the building blocks to make this blend that out. And this was years in advance of ultimately having it done. This was the first, I don't want to say real blending project, but real blending project from the perspective of every single one of those 3 barrel types yielded such a unique product that had so many different ways to put the puzzle together. And I should have done it by number, but I did it by letter. I got through, I was A, B, C, D, and it got down to V. And at this point, I knew I was getting close. I was like, you know what? I'm done. Like, I got to stop. I still have all the notes downstairs. Because I was like, it's called Vino Verso. Let's just stop at V. And V wasn't actually the final blend, but that was the last one I did. 2 batches before that was what I ultimately settled on as my favorite proportion of each barrel. Married them together, let them sit for a few more months, and ultimately bottled them. I feel like I probably left out a few details, but ultimately, American Single Malt finished in barrels from Carboy Winery in varying percentages.
Yeah. So this was you had cider, single malt and cider barrels, single malt and Albarino barrels, single malt and brandy barrels.
Yes.
It was not like you took a single malt, aged it in a cider, then moved it to an Albarino, then moved it to a brandy. So it was 3 different components. You're not like trying to triple cast something on us. You're bringing together everything into that blend.
Yeah, nothing had more than its initial barrel in heavy toast, light char, new oak. For I think, God, I'd have to look back at my notes, but I think it was either in total it was a 5-year maturation.
Yeah,
I'm drawing a blank now on if it was 2 years in the front, 3 years in the end, or I think it was 3 years in the front in the new oak, and then 2 years on the end in the finishing barrels.
Wow. Man, this is just incredible. It's incredible. I don't even know where to start.
Thanks, man. I mean, I guess like before anything else, what I would say is I think everyone likes to be inspired and like see something like, damn, that's good. What can I do? And there's a lot of discussion about finished products, and I think some finished bourbons rub people the wrong way because of the nature of the category of bourbon. They don't like the pushing into different directions. But if it's not a bourbon, it seems pretty okay by people. I really enjoyed trying some of the finished products out there, and one that, a lot stand out to me. But I'm a big fan of what Barrel does. Like so many folks, I'm a huge fan of Seagrass. But one that gets, I think, like a little slept on in some ways, their Armida product. That one I've always found so unique and interesting, and it has like almost like a fruit punch note to it. And to me, I was like, I want to make something not like that, but that was almost an inspiration point for putting this one together.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say fruit punch. I was going to go kind of the Kool-Aid Jolly Rancher route on this one. There's just a really nice, almost like the Wonka type candy grape note to it. It's incredible. I keep stopping to listen to you describe because I don't want to miss anything. But
this was when I first tried this. When I first opened this bottle, it took a while to get off the nose, and because every time I would run it past my nostrils, I would get something different, and ultimately, I got a cherry and blackberry cobbler note. With like plum wine and a little bit of clove and like cocoa powder. And I mean, that's just bringing in so many different interesting elements. It's not. Again, it's not like I'm getting cherry and blackberry. It's definitely some sort of cobbler. There's some sort of baked good note that's coming out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I always fall into the cherry pie filling on the nose, like as a first pop. But I like definitely some like kind of like spicier, like leathery notes, and I get a little bit of hibiscus on the aroma too, which kind of plays into those cobbler notes a little in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, get that blackberry thing now that you say that, Kevin.
Yeah.
But when you drink it, it is juicy. It is just a flavor explosion, man. But like berry jam, some sort of jam note. I get a little chocolate, maybe like a chocolate covered raisin.
Yeah.
Uh,
And that's like one of the challenges I think in some ways is like a lot of products will dip into a finishing barrel for like maybe 3 months, and I get it because it can overpower. But I
Right.
think I've really had a good time playing with the boldness of our single malt and how it can stand up to finishing barrels.
mhm.
And there's definitely a lot of componentry from these various barrels from Carboy, but I like the interplay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about the resistance towards finished bourbons, and I get that because I'm a little bit the same way. I feel like a lot of times people will take mistakes they may have made with a bourbon, and let's put it in a sherry cask and put it on the market. But this is not the case with this at all. I mean, this is the single malt still comes through on it, even though it's been in these different barrels for a couple of years. But it just plays so well.
Yeah, and this was again, like this was my first opportunity to put together what I see as like where blending is hard or where it could be artful.
Yeah.
It's not that hard for me to realize I need another batch of single malt or bourbon and select the barrels for a blend when it's all the same product. And I might be looking for different notes, but this was way harder to do. And it was I don't know. It was a fun process. Yeah.
And the finish on this, I'd done an Instagram post on this when I first tried it. I said, "This is Inagata de Vida long finish." I mean,
That's awesome.
It just goes on and on and on, and the chocolate kind of sits there like it does in that bourbon. Yes. But there's also a little cherry cola note that I get on it.
I'm glad you brought that up because this reminds me of those cherry cordial candies that you get around Christmas time. Mm-hmm. It's the rum cherries dipped in the chocolate hard shell. That's kind of that finish thing for me.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah. It's something that maybe I'm the only one who's going to get this, but because I'm so familiar with the individual barrels, and I still have, I decided that the Albarino was going to be the base, and I was going to build on it with the other barrels.
Yeah.
I didn't. I mean, I still have leftovers from those other barrels because it wasn't like, well, I've got, I think it was like 6 or 8 total barrels. Let's dump it all in. I did start with the entirety of the ex Albarino, but the ex cider and ex brandy. Yeah, I barely have any of the ex brandy left, but I still have like half a barrel of the ex cider left. So I guess where I'm going with that is like, I like that to me in the aroma, flavor, and finish, I can kind of pick out where each of those contributing factors are because the cider barrel finish was so like not bold, but convincing, I guess, for what it was.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask you if you had remnants of the 3 different barrel expressions.
Yeah.
That would be very interesting to taste side by side with this.
I gotta look. I wonder, maybe I do have some of the Albarino left. I gotta check the Albarino finish.
This is gorgeous, man.
It's so good. Yeah, I was telling Kevin before you hopped on. At my house, I have my bar, which is welcome and open to anyone, and then I have my cabinet, which is not to be touched. And a couple weeks ago, we hosted a 23rd birthday party for my little brother, and he had some of his friends over, and I was outside building a bonfire. And I came inside and found that one of them had gotten the shot ski. If you're not familiar with a shot ski, it's a snow ski, with 4 shot glasses on it. And they had this bottle out, and they were getting ready to pour it in the shot ski, and I said, no. Go get something off the bar.
That's great.
But man, it's so beautiful, man. And it has distinct phases, sort of like you were talking about, that aroma, flavor, finish. It just moves through. I could very happily sit and smell this for a half an hour without ever taking a sip, but it's just beautiful. You've captured baking spice, you've captured fruit, you've captured confectionery. It's just all there, everything that you want. So I know Kevin has said, this is whiskey of the year contention for him. I think it's right up there for me as well. So
Oh, thanks. It's
cheers to you.
Thank you. Yeah, cheers. Thank you for the feedback on it. It's I think that stuff like this is where, like I feel really lucky in the position I'm in, where I do get to play with this stuff. In this manner. It's, I don't know, like a lot of jobs don't have the opportunity to I don't know, do these sorts of things. So while usually it's this relative grind of like, we got to make more single malt. I just had to make more gin, because our gin, we start with our American single malt base. So it's a pretty long process to get there, and we were out of gin. So, while that's like got to crank it out, this is a fun, slow process that, takes years. And sometimes with our Progeny series, I have one planned, and I either completely kick that can till the following year and don't come out with one, or sometimes we reshuffle it. But this one, I think this one was going to come out a year prior, but I just didn't. It wasn't there yet, and I really like where it's at now. So,
do you have something planned for Progeny 5?
Kinda. I mean, I do, and it's like collaborations that we've already started, but this next year might not happen, just because if it's we can't make it be ready, and there's not too many that we've done that could be done fairly quickly. Like a lot of times when they're conceived of, it's years until they're going to be there. We have one that I really like a lot. I think it's almost 3 years old, but we had a brewery from it's funny actually. So there's a brewery over in Gunnison and High Alpine Brewing, and they make this really awesome Russian Imperial Stout called the Matron, and they age it in our American single malt barrels. And I just got an email from their owner, Scott Klein, and he said, hey, it's almost that time of year again and we basically, he hits me up, and I bring him 4 new American single malt barrels, and we drive to the top of Monarch Pass. There's a ski area mountain up there. So it's like almost a halfway point for both of us. And I give him the barrels, and he goes back and fills them. Well, we had him in almost 3 years ago, and said, hey, how about this? You brew the Matron on our system, but don't put hops in it. Just make it the same way you would otherwise, though. And we'll distill it, and we'll put it in a mix of barrels. Like we'll put it in, our same new oak profile, and then we'll put in some of your Matron barrels that were our barrels, but you put your beer in.
Oh, very cool.
That's a phenomenal whiskey. It's just I want to let it go longer than 3 years. So maybe 4 years, 5 years, we'll see. But it's delicious, and
that's great.
That's so cool. That is so cool. I love the way that you work with, cooperate with, and support other distillers and breweries in your state. That's terrific.
It's people always say, like, I think they're used to it for beer. They'll say, like, they'll go up to a brewery at a festival and say, well, what's new? And they're like, oh, what's new is this. We just made this last week. That's really hard to do as a fucking distillery.
Right.
So, I mean, this is kind of my answer to what's new. And I do have some ideas. We've yet to work with another Colorado distillery on the Progeny series. So I'm starting to think maybe that could be next year's, is just an intentful blend collaboration with another distillery.
Yeah. There's some great distilleries in Colorado.
Oh yeah.
Any in particular that you've got in mind?
There's a ton I'd love to work with. One in particular that I really want to work with for kind of a quirky reason. Talnua out of Arvada, which is just outside of Denver. They do, their take on a single pot still Irish style whiskey, and they are making magic. I mean, their stuff at like 2 years old was phenomenal, but it's even getting older and better and more complex. I was chatting with them about maybe if we did, a single pot still style where it was in some capacity half malted, half unmalted barley and triple distilled. The problem with that though is that wouldn't be ready. That would take another like 4 to 5 years before I'm done. But I would love to do a collaboration with them. I hold them in massive high regard. But man, I guess some of the other ones out there, and I'm definitely going to forget some of the other phenomenal ones. But the guys at Boulder Spirits, Boulder Bourbon, they make a single malt as well. They're doing awesome stuff. Laws 291. There's so many good ones out there. Just down the road from us, Woods High Mountain Distillery in Salida. They're a smaller outfit, but they're doing some really cool stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Even not really a Colorado distillery by any means, but Colorado roots. The crew from Hidden Barn, they're putting out Kentucky bourbon that they're sourcing from some amazing craft distilleries. But I'd love to figure out a way to work with them too. I love their stuff.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. All right. Well, we've kept you for a while now, Lenny. So I've had a great time talking with you about what you're doing in the whiskeys that we've tried tonight. Look, people, if you can find a way to get your hands on this, do it. Do it. I'm not saying break laws, but bend them.
Yeah, we're Colorado.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we'll look for this super sour mash single malt to come out somewhere, and then find a way to get our hands on that, because it is incredible as well. But everything we've had from you is just fantastic. Just incredible amount of respect for you, what you're doing, your commitment to it as a craft, and not just as let's mass produce something and get it out there and make a buck. So greatly appreciate you and your approach to what you do.
Well, likewise. And thank you for the, I always love the thoughtful conversation on the stuff that, we all think about so much,
Yeah.
It's fun to talk about it.
So tell everybody again where they can find you on social media and order your product.
Yeah. For social media at Deerhammer, across the board on almost everything. I'm a little lazy on social media these days, but I'm going to start getting better, I think.
I think you said that last time you were on the show.
Did I?
Yeah.
I had spurts of motivation. I mean, our distribution is primarily in Colorado, but we're launching in Missouri. I'm actually hitting the road tomorrow morning. I'm going to be there all week. If anyone, I don't know if this will time out with it, but I'm going to the Kansas City Whiskey Expo, which I'm pretty excited about next Saturday. So yeah, there you can hop on deerhammer.com and order our stuff. Again, Sealbox has some really cool stuff of ours. And then of course, our friends at the ABV Barrel Shop in outside St. Louis, they have some really cool single barrels as well. So, and again, if you're a distributor, holler. Well, I'd love to distribute our stuff in more places.
And you can order online at deerhammer.com or at Sealbox. They've got your corn whiskey, your bourbon, and a single malt, I believe, right?
Yep, that's right.
Yep. Drew, where can people find you?
Yep, you can find me on Instagram at drew.crawley63 and drewcrawleymusic.com. As Kevin mentioned before, Palomino is now out. I would be honored if you'd stream that. Got a few more dates through the rest of the year, but after Thanksgiving, I'm going to try to take some time off, and we need to finish mastering this record. So it's all cut, but keep your eyes peeled early 2024 for a full LP. And as of yesterday, some vinyl is in the works. So we're going to have some vinyl.
Very
pressings.
nice.
So keep your eyes out.
Very nice. Bourbon Turntable. You can watch the show on YouTube. So get over there, hit the subscribe button. We would love to have you join us all the time. Leave us some comments. Tell us what you think. If you've got a Pennsylvania band that you think is awesome that we didn't mention, tell us. If you've got a Colorado band that you think we snubbed, let us know about it, because we're always on the lookout for new bands and things we may have forgotten about. You can listen to the show on your favorite podcast platform, as long as it's Apple, Spotify, or Google. We have a Facebook page where we post all of our shows. We have a Facebook group where we post about the things that we're drinking, the things that we're listening to. Instagram, again, if you follow us on Instagram, you would have seen my comments on this Deerhammer Progeny Series a while back. So we're always posting stuff on there. So be sure to check us out. Now, Lenny, you mentioned going to Missouri. You mentioned our friends with ABV. As we're recording this, we did have a friend that passed away this past week, Rick Brenner. We all know him as the legend. Rick was the kind of guy that wherever he was, he made it better. You know, he was always glad to see everybody. He loved whiskey. He loved the industry. He supported it, both in his comments and in his buying power. He was just a fantastic man who lost his battle against ALS after a very courageous fight. So let's have one last toast to Rick and to
Cheers
Jen,
to the
his
legend.
daughter, and cheers. Rest easy, Rick. So, and until next time, on behalf of Drew and Lenny and myself, cheers, love, Freebird.
Cheers.
Night, folks.
Good night.